Hello, and welcome to the penultimate episode of Fun Facts with Liam. And this one, I reference this show a lot, as I do The Sopranos, but there's a lot of historical stuff to kind of chinwag about, and that's another HBO show, of course, Boardwalk Empire. Now, those of you that are fans of it, you may have seen that in. Oh, pardon me. I've just finished my supper. Jacket taters with chili con carne and a couple of Irish sausages. Anyway, yeah. In the first season, Jimmy Darmody meets an up-and-coming Al Capone, where he's still with Johnny Torrio's group. Al Capone, and this locale wise, I suppose, is sort of related to the bloke I'm going to be talking about. Is that, Al Capone, if you know his story, he came from Brooklyn and then he moved up north to Chicago and joined the 5 Points gang uh, uh, as a as a as a barman at a brothel run by Johnny Torrio and Big Jim Colosimo, who was Johnny Torrio's boss at the time, and then he got whacked in the show as well by Frankie Yale, another Italian gangster who was actually called Francesco Ioli. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, yeah, yeah. There's a couple of there's a bit in one of the episodes where Jimmy goes to Chicago, works as the token non WAP, as it were, I suppose. When they're having neighborhood disputes with Irish gangsters and Greeks, the Irish gangsters were encroaching on the Greek territory because that the area of Chicago that they were warring over was Greektown, as you of course may know, those of you that have watched it all the way through. But when they've done all the business, Al Capone keeps kind of taking the piss out of, or making light of Jimmy's World War One service, and he mentions he was in France, and eventually it comes to a point where Jimmy humiliates him right back, saying that there was no lost battalion in France, but there was actually a gangster that is notorious for being actually hailed in a 1920 newspaper report, not too long after he was killed, Edward Monk Eastman, who was a New York gangster, mobster, whatever, same thing, who led a gang of cronies called the Eastman Gang, and he'd been, he was already into middle age when he was, when he served, I suppose he would have been. He was born in 1875 and died in 1920. Like I said, it was death. Sorry for the umming and ahhing. I sound like a valley girl, but he was already notorious in his 30s for being in mob wars in 1901 and 1902 and pretty much all of the early 1900s, and then when America entered World War One, he was right there. Very useful and valued for his for being, a good shot and overall hard bastard. So pretty much comparatively, Al Capone did the stolen valor kind of thing, I suppose. Would it be stolen valor? Yeah, he lied about it, so it'd be stolen valor. There's other things that get you done for or tied with the whole stolen valor thing. You know, not counting, uh, of course, the recent news with that very unwell gentleman. I suppose that from my side of the pond, with his medals, and even going so far as as to do ceremonies at castles and military state buildings or whatever they would have been. Um, but yeah, Eastman actually did serve. I mean, Al Capone outlived him by 20, 28 years, but because he was killed in a gang war. But I mean, Eastman was killed in a gang war, but Eastman actually served and came back from World War One. Probably a war even more awful, probably in some ways than the Second World War. So yeah, that was the. I mean, I'll put the references in there as well, of course, where you know people have reported on it as well. But yeah, this was a kind of a I think the theme in the back of my mind is inspiration. So that this was inspiration, and I was kind of mulling over, previous day and day before, um, you know what baddies have been actually served their country technically. So yeah, that's it for the penultimate episode of Fun Facts with Liam of this week, and of course, fourth one is going to be an absolute belter.